the desolate heart of the Gulf of Mexico, where the horizon stretches into an infinite void and the ocean hums with secrets that predate humanity, Thomas Wilson stepped onto the helipad of a rig that seemed to challenge the very fabric of reality. The helicopter's rotors groaned to a reluctant halt at 11:03 a.m. +07 on Monday, May 19, 2025, after a grueling 3-hour journey through turbulent skies, the air thick with the briny sting of salt water, the metallic tang of aviation fuel, and the faint, acrid bite of something unplaceable. Wilson's legs trembled as he disembarked, the vibrations of the descent still resonating in his muscles. His 15 years in the oil industry offering no anchor for the surreal spectacle before him. Rising from the restless, slate-gray waves was an industrial leviathan, its steel skeleton a jagged silhouette against the midday sun, its sprawling decks a labyrinthine expanse that dwarfed every platform he had ever worked on. This was no ordinary oil rig. It was a fortress of enigma, its towering cranes swaying gently with the ocean's breath, their shadows dancing across the deck like specters. The rig's corridors twisted into darkness, whispering of forbidden knowledge, while its entire structure seemed to pulse with an eerie vitality, as if alive beneath the oppressive weight of the surrounding void. The platform's sheer scale was staggering, its footprint easily tripling the size of standard deep-water operations, its metal surfaces glistening with a faint, oily sheen under the harsh glare of sodium lights that cast long, distorted shadows across the deck. The air buzzed with the low, omnipresent thrum of machinery, punctuated by the distant crash of waves against the rig's supports, the occasional screech of metal against metal, and the faint, rhythmic creaking of the structure as it swayed with the sea's motion. A symphony of industry laced with an undercurrent of unease that Wilson couldn't shake. He hoisted his weathered duffel bag, the strap digging into his shoulder with a familiar ache, and followed a vivid yellow line painted across the grimy steel, a lifeline that snaked through the chaos toward what he assumed was a processing station. His heavy boots clanged against the deck, each step a solitary echo swallowed by the ambient noise, a reminder of his isolation in this steel wilderness. Suddenly, 2 figures materialized from the gloom, their emergence as abrupt as a thunderclap, their presence a jolt to his already frayed nerves. They were armed with assault rifles, the barrels catching the light with a menacing glint, their faces etched with a blank, almost robotic professionalism that sent a shiver down Wilson's spine, cutting through the humid warmth of the Gulf breeze like a blade. ID and authorization, the taller one barked, his hand extended with military precision, the weapon slung across his chest a silent testament to authority, its presence a stark contrast to the casual security he'd encountered on other rigs. Wilson fumbled in his pocket, retrieving his credentials. Thomas Wilson, senior drilling engineer, and a sheaf of transfer papers that detailed his assignment, his fingers trembling slightly under the weight of their scrutiny. The guard examined them with a handheld device, its screen casting a cold blue glow across his stern features, while his partner's gaze remained fixed on the horizon, an uncanny vigilance that ignored Wilson entirely, as if the newcomer were insignificant compared to the vast, dark expanse beyond. On other rigs, security scanned for threats boarding from the sea, pirates, saboteurs, or rogue weather. But here, the sea itself seemed the adversary, its dark, glassy surface holding an unspoken menace that hung heavy in the air, a predator waiting to strike. "Clear," the guard finally muttered, thrusting the papers back into Wilson's hands with a curt nod, his voice devoid of warmth. "Follow the yellow line to processing." Wilson obeyed, stepping into a corridor network that felt more like the interior of a high-security fortress than an oil platform, its walls a cold, unyielding gray. Keycard scanners blinked red and green at every junction, their electronic eyes tracking his every move with an almost sentient precision, while security cameras perched like silent predators at every corner, their lenses glinting with a predatory sheen, their unblinking gaze a constant reminder of surveillance. The air carried the sharp, biting tang of metal and oil, overlaid with a faint, acrid scent that hinted at chemicals or something more sinister, perhaps the residue of some unseen process, a fragrance that clung to the back of his throat and left a bitter aftertaste. Steel doors loomed at intervals, each marked with clearance levels, authorized personnel only, their surfaces cold and unyielding, their locks whispering of secrets locked beyond reach, their very presence a challenge to his curiosity. At the processing station, a woman sat behind bulletproof glass, her expression as impassive as a marble statue, her eyes hidden behind the reflection of the harsh overhead lights, her movements mechanical as she processed his arrival. She took his fingerprints with a device that hummed softly, its touch cold against his skin, scanned his retinas with a beam that made his eyes water and his vision blur momentarily, and slid a keycard across the counter without meeting his gaze, her fingers steady and precise. "Level 2 clearance," she intoned, her voice a monotone drone that echoed in the sterile space. "Don't try doors marked 3 or higher." Her warning lingered in the air, a subtle threat wrapped in bureaucracy, as she gestured down another yellow-lined corridor toward the east wing, her finger a solitary beacon in the dim light, her posture rigid as if she, too, were part of the rig's machinery. There, Foreman Robert Kendrick awaited, a figure carved from the mold of military discipline. His mid-40s frame marked by short, steel-gray hair that seemed to absorb the light, and a posture honed by years of command, his spine ramrod straight. He sat behind a desk cluttered with tablets, charts, a scattering of coffee-stained papers, and a half-eaten protein bar, his eyes locked on a screen that flickered with data as Wilson entered, the glow casting sharp shadows across his weathered face. "Wilson," he said, the word a statement rather than a question, his gaze lifting briefly to assess the newcomer with a piercing intensity that felt like a physical weight. "Credentials are impressive. Palmer Rigs, North Sea, Kazakhstan. Why'd you take this posting?" The question caught Wilson off guard. Foremen typically cared only for a worker's skill, not the whims that drove them to a job, their focus on output rather than intent. "Triple the pay of my last contract," he admitted, his voice steady despite the flicker of unease that danced in his chest, adding with a cautious edge and curiosity. The job description was sparse, mentioning only specialized extraction techniques, and I wanted to see what that meant. Kendrick's eyes narrowed, a shadow of suspicion crossing his weathered features, his lips tightening into a thin line as if weighing Wilson's words for hidden meaning. "We value discretion here," he said, his voice low and deliberate, each word weighted with intent, a warning wrapped in velvet. "Your contract includes an extensive non-disclosure agreement for a reason." He tapped the tablet, its screen reflecting a cold light in his eyes, a gesture that seemed to seal Wilson's fate, the sound of his finger against the glass a punctuation mark in the silence. "You'll bunk with James Chun. He's been here 3 years. We'll show you the living quarters. Tomorrow 0600, full briefing and assignment. Questions?" Wilson seized the moment, his curiosity a spark in the dim room, a fire that refused to be doused. "What exactly are we drilling for out here?" Kendrick's face hardened, a mask of control slipping into place, his jaw setting as if bracing for an assault, his eyes darkening with a guarded intensity. "Oil, Wilson. What else would we be drilling for?" The tone was a steel trap, snapping shut on further inquiry, its finality a wall that brooked no challenge, the words carrying an undercurrent of menace that made Wilson's skin prickle. "No other questions, sir," Wilson conceded, sensing the unspoken boundary, his mind racing with the implications, his heart pounding a rhythm of its own. Kendrick nodded curtly, a dismissal wrapped in approval, his gaze returning to the tablet as if Wilson had ceased to exist. "James will be in the mess hall, East Wing, 3rd level." The mess hall unveiled a surprise, a modern oasis amid the industrial sprawl, its walls dominated by a sweeping expanse of real windows that framed the restless, slate-gray ocean beyond, the glass reflecting the dim glow of interior lights like a mirror to another world. The windows were a rarity on rigs, where portholes were a luxury, their transparency offering a tantalizing glimpse of the world outside, a world that seemed to watch back with an unblinking eye. The air carried the rich, savory scent of steak and roasted vegetables, a stark departure from the dehydrated rations and synthetic flavors of Wilson's past assignments. The aroma a siren call that drew him deeper into the room, his stomach growling in response. About 30 people occupied the space, half its capacity, their conversations a low murmur beneath the steady hum of ventilation, the occasional clink of cutlery, and the faint hum of a radio playing a staticky news broadcast in the background. Wilson took a tray laden with a perfectly seared steak, its surface glistening with juices, a faint char marking its edges, and vibrant greens that crunched with freshness, their colors a stark contrast to the gray steel around them. The meal's quality a marvel that defied the rig's isolation, a testament to the company's resources. As he scanned the room, his eyes adjusting to the dimness, a voice broke through the ambient noise. "You must be Wilson." He turned to face James Chen, a man in his early 30s with eyes that held a wary intelligence, their depths shadowed by unspoken burdens. His company uniform crisp but his posture tense, as if perpetually poised for flight or fight. His shoulders squared against an invisible threat. "I'm your bunkmate," Chen said, extending a hand for a firm yet fleeting shake, his grip conveying strength before withdrawing as if reluctant to linger, his fingers calloused from years of technical work. He guided Wilson to a table apart from the others, its isolation a deliberate choice, the space around them a buffer against the crowd. "How long have you been in oil?" he asked, settling into the seat with a grace that belied his tension, his movements precise. 15 years, Wilson replied, his voice carrying the weight of experience, the years etched into his bones. "Started roughnecking out of college, worked my way up to senior engineer." Chen's responses were clipped, efficient, each word a bullet point, his tone guarded. 5 years here, 2 at other locations. I handle the Eastern Platform, technical systems, mostly monitoring and maintenance. The steak's tenderness melted on Wilson's tongue, a culinary anomaly that spoke of care amidst the chaos of rig life. Its flavor a complex dance of salt, sear, and a hint of smokiness that lingered on his palate, a rare moment of pleasure in the steel wilderness. "Food's better than any rig I've been on," he remarked, savoring the taste. The warmth of the meal a comfort against the cold uncertainty. Chun nodded, a faint smile touching his lips, a crack in his guarded facade, a glimpse of humanity beneath the surface. Company believes in keeping people comfortable. Contracts are long, 8 months on, 1 month off. The rotation struck Wilson as unusual. Standard shifts ran 2 to 4 weeks, making the schedule feel almost punitive. A sentence served in steel and salt, a test of endurance that few could withstand. 2 men approached. Michael Reeves, mid-30s, with an air of command that filled the space like a general surveying his troops, his presence a gravitational pull, and David Cohen, late 30s, his sharp eyes missing nothing, their glint a predator's assessment, his gaze darting with a restless energy. "This the new engineer?" Michael asked, his voice carrying a note of appraisal, a challenge wrapped in welcome, his tone a mixture of curiosity and authority. Chan introduced them. Michael oversaw production floor 2, his presence a pillar of authority, while David was senior technician, his quiet observation a counterpoint, his mind a steel trap for details. "Welcome aboard," Michael said, sliding into a chair with the ease of ownership, his movements fluid. "How was the flight?" "Long," Wilson replied, his mind drifting to the endless ocean, the hours of gray waves stretching into eternity. "Lots of empty ocean." David's gaze flicked to Chan, then back to his plate, a subtle dance of communication, a silent exchange that Wilson couldn't decipher. "You get used to the isolation," he murmured, his tone laced with an unspoken weight, a hint of something darker beneath the surface, his words a warning cloaked in reassurance. Curiosity nudged Wilson further, a spark igniting in the dim light, a fire that refused to be doused despite the tension. "What are the production numbers like?" he asked casually, testing the waters, his voice a probe into the unknown, his tone light but his eyes sharp. Michael and David exchanged a glance, a silent current passing between them, a warning etched in their eyes, their pupils contracting with a shared secret, their faces a mask of control. "Standard deep water extraction," Michael said, his words measured, each syllable a brick in a wall, his voice a fortress against inquiry. "You'll get the full specs tomorrow." Undeterred, Wilson pressed, his voice steady despite the tension that thickened the air like a fog. "Drilling depth? Standard or ultra-deep?" The table fell silent, the air thickening with a palpable unease, as if the room itself held its breath, the clatter of the mess hall fading into a distant hum. Chun shifted beside him, muscles tensing as if bracing for a storm, his chair creaking under the strain, his hands tightening around his fork. "All operational details are covered in the morning briefing," David said, his voice polite but unyielding, a door slamming shut on the topic, its echo reverberating in the stillness, his eyes a barrier that Wilson couldn't breach. The conversation veered to Houston sports and satellite TV reception, a safe harbor of triviality, but any attempt to probe rig specifics met with vague deflections or abrupt subject changes, a choreography of evasion that spoke of a deeper truth. These men guarded a secret, their reticence a fortress Wilson couldn't yet breach, its walls built of silence, sidelong glances, and unspoken agreements, a mystery that gnawed at him like a persistent ache. After dinner, Chun led him to their quarters, a space larger than typical rig accommodations, featuring 2 decent beds with thin mattresses that creaked under weight, a small sitting area with a worn couch that sagged in the middle, its fabric frayed at the edges, and a private bathroom boasting actual water pressure. A luxury Wilson hadn't anticipated in the steel wilderness, the steady stream a rare comfort. A window faced west, framing the sun's descent into the ocean, its golden rays fracturing on the waves into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow, a fleeting beauty that contrasted with the rig's cold functionality. "Lights out recommended at 2200, but not mandatory," Chun said, his tone practical, a routine etched in repetition, his voice a steady anchor. "Don't make noise if you stay up." He pointed to a wall panel, its buttons glowing faintly in the dimness, their colors a stark contrast against the gray steel. "Blue button for general announcements, red for emergencies. Don't touch the black button." "What's the black button for?" Wilson asked, curiosity piqued, his voice a whisper against the room's stillness, his eyes drawn to the mysterious button. "You don't have clearance to know," Chun replied without hesitation, his words a lock clicking shut, his tone final as he claimed the bed farthest from the door and immersed himself in a tablet, its screen casting a ghostly light across his face, illuminating the lines of fatigue etched into his features. The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Wilson to unpack in a silence thick with unspoken questions, the air heavy with the weight of secrets. He stowed his gear in a narrow locker, the metal clanging softly as he shoved his duffel inside, showered under the rare luxury of steady water that cascaded over his tired frame, washing away the salt and grime of travel, and lay on his bed, the rig's ambient sounds washing over him like a tide. The creak of metal under strain, the distant thrum of generators pulsing like a mechanical heart, the rhythmic crash of waves against the supports, all familiar from years at sea. Yet beneath them pulsed a rhythm alien and organic, a heartbeat from the depths that defied the cold logic of machinery, its cadence slow and deliberate, as if alive, resonating in his chest like a second pulse. Drawn to the window, he peered into the moonless night, the rig's lights piercing the darkness with a sterile glow, but the ocean below refused to reflect them, absorbing the illumination into a circular void that seemed to pulse in time with the sound. A black mirror that swallowed light and hope, its surface an abyss that stared back. The rhythm grew louder, a visceral throb from below the seabed, a sound that seemed to seep through the steel, resonating in his bones. Movement flickered in the depths, solid, deliberate, a shape that defied the random dance of waves, its outline sinuous and wrong, then vanished into the black, leaving only the echo of its presence, a shadow that lingered in his mind. "Don't look at the water for too long," Chen's voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and urgent, a warning that cut through the haze. "It's against rig protocols." Wilson turned. Chen sat up, his silhouette framed against the wall, his eyes glinting with a mixture of fear and resignation, then faced away, feigning sleep, his breathing uneven, a telltale sign of unease. Back in bed, Wilson's eyes remained open, the rhythm and the water's darkness gnawing at his mind. A riddle he couldn't solve, a puzzle that refused to yield its secrets. Sleep eluded him, a prisoner to the unknown, his thoughts spiraling into the abyss, each beat of the rhythm a reminder of the mystery beneath. Morning arrived with a weight of exhaustion that pressed against his skull, a fog that clouded his thoughts. Chan, already dressed in the crisp uniformity of the company, quipped, "You look like crap," his voice carrying a hint of dry humor, a rare crack in his guarded demeanor. "Is the coffee any good?" Wilson asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his voice rough with fatigue, his throat dry. "Better than you'd expect," Chen replied, a rare hint of warmth breaking through his guarded demeanor. A lifeline in the cold, his words a small comfort. After a quick shower, the water a brief solace against his aching muscles. Washing away the remnants of a sleepless night, they headed to the briefing. The mess hall teemed with the morning shift, workers grabbing trays of scrambled eggs and crisp bacon. The clatter of cutlery a chaotic symphony. The air filled with the aroma of coffee and the faint tang of grease. Wilson filled a thermos with coffee that smelled richer than any offshore brew he'd tasted. Its aroma a promise of clarity, a dark roast with notes of caramel that warmed his hands through the metal, and followed Chan to a conference room where 20 people sat in orderly rows, their faces a mosaic of anticipation, resignation, and a quiet, shared dread. Robert stood at the front, tablet in hand, his watch a silent reprimand ticking against the silence, its rhythm a counterpoint to the one Wilson had heard in the night. 5 minutes, he announced, his voice cutting through the murmur, a blade of authority. Wilson took a seat beside Michael, the coffee's warmth a brief comfort against the chill of uncertainty, its heat seeping into his palms. Robert dimmed the lights with a flick of his finger, projecting a detailed cross-section of the rig onto the wall, its lines and depths a map to the unknown, its complexity a testament to the rig's purpose. For our newest team member, and a refresher, this installation exists in what the company designates a pocket of exception. He began, his tone authoritative yet tinged with caution, his words measured as if treading on fragile ground. Standard physics behaves unpredictably here. That's why we have protocols beyond typical safety measures. Wilson's fatigue evaporated, replaced by a jolt of disbelief. 15 years in the industry had never hinted at such a notion. His mind reeling with the implications, his heart racing as he processed the words. Michael's subtle head shake, a flicker of movement beside him, urged caution, a silent plea to tread lightly, his eyes a warning against questions. Robert recited rules with the cadence of a drill sergeant, each word a command etched in steel, his voice a steady drumbeat. No extended observation of the water, 30 seconds maximum, a limit that piqued Wilson's curiosity, a rule that seemed to hide a deeper truth. No contact with it, a prohibition that hinted at danger, constant radio communication during outdoor work, a lifeline against the unknown, and immediate reporting of unusual sightings, a directive that carried the weight of fear, its vagueness a shroud over the truth. David raised a hand, his voice tentative, a ripple in the stillness, his posture hesitant. What counts as unusual? Robert's face tightened, a mask of control slipping, his jaw clenching as if guarding a truth, his eyes darkening with a guarded intensity. If you see something that doesn't belong on an oil rig or in the Gulf, report it, he replied, the vagueness hanging heavy, a fog that obscured more than it revealed. His words a puzzle that offered no solution. The room's lack of surprise, the steady gazes and subtle nods, testified to a shared knowledge, a secret woven into the fabric of their lives, a truth they all carried but dared not speak. Assignments followed, Wilson with Michael on East Production, Chun to Monitoring Station 3. As they dispersed, chatter turned to pressure readings and shift schedules, a veneer of normalcy cloaking the bizarre, their voices a chorus of denial against the unknown, a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion of routine. Michael led him to the production floor, a cavernous space alive with the clatter of drilling equipment and the soft glow of monitoring screens. Its vastness a cathedral of steel and technology, the air thick with the scent of oil and metal. Your job: monitor these systems, maintain optimal drilling parameters, report anomalies to me or Robert directly, Michael instructed, his voice steady, a captain at the helm, his tone a steady anchor in the chaos. Wilson ran his hands over the controls, the cold metal grounding him, the depth gauge reading 12,342 meters, a depth that defied the limits of current technology. a number that sent a shiver through his spine, his mind racing with the impossibility of it. Pocket of exception, Michael reiterated, his tone a mantra, unveiling modified safety protocols. Extra emergency shutoffs glowing red in the dimness, their buttons a stark warning, redundant monitoring systems blinking with data, their screens a cascade of numbers, evacuation routes etched on every wall in stark white lines, their paths a promise of escape. Underwater camera feeds displayed an ocean floor with crystalline clarity, its details too sharp, powered by proprietary tech that piqued Wilson's curiosity. A mystery wrapped in innovation. The images a window into the abyss. Equipment modifications, reinforced barriers that gleamed with fresh welds, unfamiliar symbols etched in cryptic patterns that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. Suggested protection against more than standard risks. Their purpose a riddle he couldn't decipher, a language he couldn't read. At lunch, Chun revealed high crew turnover, sudden transfers. 5 gone last month, their absences a gaping wound. A shadow over the rig's polished facade. His voice low as if confessing a sin. His eyes darting to the door as if expecting interruption. That night, assigned to the east platform, Wilson patrolled alone, the vast floor echoing with his footsteps. Each sound a solitary note in the silence, the air cold against his skin. At 3:17 a.m., human screams shattered the mechanical hum, raw and primal. A cry that pierced the steel cocoon, its echo a dagger in the stillness. He grabbed his radio, its weight a comfort in his trembling hands. This is Wilson on East Production. Screams from lower deck. Anyone copy? Static crackled like a storm before Robert's voice answered. Clipped and cold. All personnel remain at stations. Security responding. Ignoring protocol. His heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Wilson raced downstairs, the stairs clanging under his boots, their sound a desperate cacophony. On the walkway, 3 guards grappled with Marcus, a roughneck with a face contorted in terror, his body yanked toward the water with an unnatural force that defied gravity, his screams a plea for salvation. A guard fired a harpoon, its steel tips slicing the air with a whistle. The sea churned, a dark mass writhing beneath the surface, its form indistinct yet menacing, a nightmare given shape. Marcus was pulled over the railing, vanishing without a splash, the water closing over him like a hungry maw, its surface undisturbed as if he had never been. "Man overboard!" a guard shouted, his voice breaking, a crack in his stoic facade. Robert ordered lockdown, his command echoing through the PA system, a decree that sealed their fate. In quarters, Chen's lack of surprise, his eyes steady and unyielding, hinted at precedent, a history buried in silence, a cycle that repeated with grim regularity. The official story, epileptic seizure, clashed with Wilson's memory, a lie wrapped in medical jargon, a cover for the truth he had witnessed. Threats of transfer silenced dissent, their weight a chain around his neck, a warning that echoed in his mind. Days later, a detour to the medical bay revealed Marcus, empty-eyed, his gaze fixed on the ceiling, studied by figures in protective gear, their movements clinical, not treated, a specimen under glass high. As humanity stripped away, reassigned to the western platform, Wilson watched a helicopter carry Marcus seaward, not toward the mainland, its rotors a fading hum against the horizon, its trajectory a mystery that deepened the dread. New guards, their faces unfamiliar, their eyes cold, crew vanishings that left empty chairs and whispered rumors, and a note. Research level B3 midnight. Propelled him forward, a moth to a flame, his curiosity a fire that burned brighter than fear. On camera feeds, a multi-armed shape circled the supports, its movement deliberate, a predator stalking its prey, erased by David with a keystroke, its existence denied. At B3, tanks held transformed humans, Marcus aware, his hands pressing against the glass, pleading with silent desperation, his eyes a mirror of torment. Documents unveiled a 30-year project drilling into a dimensional boundary, turning workers into subjects for bioweapons and revolutionary technology. Their humanity stripped away, their bodies a canvas for horrors. Exposed and changing, Wilson plotted escape with James, whose brother languished in a tank, his eyes a mirror of loss, his resolve a mirror of Wilson's own. A power failure distraction, orchestrated with precision, secured his helicopter exit, but exposure marked him, dark lines creeping under his skin, a transformation he couldn't outrun. As he lifted off, Williams' transformed gaze followed, a silent sentinel to the abyss beneath, his eyes a testament to the cost of truth. Could you endure the isolation and dread of such a rig? Or would the boundaries pull claim you too? What would you do with the truth if you escaped?